out of it lately. I have been a bit sort of random lately, so I really appreciate everybody sort of hanging in there. Things have been really weird lately and very strange. There's probably a few things I have to address first off, but I'm glad you can join me. And today we're doing Noah's Ark. It's Friday, and I get to relax and do a fundamentalist fail. And I found this old Noah's Ark video, which is kind of hilarious. Like it just grabbed me. It was like the reality of Noah's Ark, and it just grabbed me, kind of thing. And I'm getting very distracted by the Minecraft chat because I absolutely loved Minecraft. I don't play Minecraft much anymore, but I do absolutely love it. So what are we doing today? We're looking at a video from, I believe it's World Bible Studies, regarding Noah's Ark, and the guy's sort of taking you through Noah's Ark like he's a tour guide. It's absolutely hilarious, and I've got a few things that I want to show, reasons why, and places where they're being, um, I would say slightly dodgy, but very dodgy, like totally sus, like very suspicious. So, um, which you probably knew already. World Video Bible School is the one that did it, and I think I put the link in the description if people do want it. But I don't recommend this video. It's pretty terrible. Yeah, so last night I got into it with a Jim Bob guy on a channel, and the guy's absolutely dreadful. I am tossing up whether to do a review, but he's such a absolute scumbag. He doesn't really deserve being talked about that much. So I'll just mention that and sort of say, hey, it's been weighing on my mind for the last few hours whether or not I should do something, as he came out with a syllogism. And when I went over the syllogism, there were some major flaws in it. So I do want to know if people would like me to address that. I can do like a room rumble and address that. I believe Dave, who's in the audience from Captive Desk, was there. And so do you want me to go over that? Do you want me to do a stream about that? I don't know. I'm not sure that people like my approach to things. So not 100% sure, but I will start on this video, and even from the word go, it's absolutely hilarious. Like it just is loading its sort of stuff up front, if that's something I can say. Um, where is it? It is in a Chrome tab. Yes, there we go. Okay. And oh yeah, I mean I've got Poseidon for you here. So just because it's Noah's Ark, so apparently we're doing mythology as if it's reality. There you go. There's Poseidon for you. Enjoy that. Enjoy. So this is how it starts. And the things you have heard from me among many witnesses, commit this faithful men who will teach others also. What's that got to do with Noah's Ark? Like, I don't understand. It's got literally nothing to. It's basically like, yeah, we're teaching you because the Bible told us to. Do you think teaching would occur without the Bible, like telling you to? Pretty sure it would. Pretty sure it would. I don't know why they need to say, hey, the Bible said to teach you, so that's what we're doing. Why can't you just teach people? Like, why do you need the Bible? So I don't know. It's very strange. The world of creationists is very strange. For the Bible said it so. You would like my responses? Yeah. Look, talking to him is kind of a waste of time, but yeah, I would like to be honest with you. Um, okay, so let's get into this. But for the moment, and the reason why we're doing Noah's Ark is because last Friday I promised somebody. To be honest with you, I'll be really honest. I can't even remember who said it, but somebody in the chat said, "Hey, can we do Noah's Ark?" And I went, I you know, I don't have anything on Noah's Ark prepared, but I promise I'll do it next week. So because I promised it, you're getting it. So sorry. If you have any requests, call them out. If I promise it, I will deliver on it. Having said that, I'm not sure. I'm gonna see if I can check in with some people, see if it's a good idea to respond to Jim Bob, the incel redneck swamp dweller. and see what they think. So I'm not promising that yet, but if I promise something, so yeah, I promise the ark, I'm delivering the ark.
This is a production of World Video by...
Oh yeah, okay, I can skip past this. Yeah, like yeah.
When you think about the reality of Noah's Ark.
Oh, a little bit fast, I'm sorry. My apologies. I will tone that down.
You might have questions about its size, its construction, or its cargo.
I do have questions. Yes, I have lots of questions about its size, construction, and cargo, because seriously, it doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Like, there's masses of problems with it.
Because you've probably seen the pictures like I have, of a quaint little boat and an old pudgy man and a handful of animals packed inside. We show these pictures to our children in books and in video.
We indoctrinate our kids with the idea that this is all possible. Look, even when you get into the physics of it, it's not possible. And we'll sort of, yeah.
But what was Noah's Ark really like? Did Noah and his sons really build the Ark? And did they really live on it with all those animals for months? And how about the big question? How large was the Ark? I mean, how long, how tall, how wide? Well, on these questions, we don't have to be left wondering. In the Bible, God gives precise measurements.
How thick was the Ark? Was the Ark a thick boy? Was the Ark? Yeah, because the Bible says it so. We don't. Yeah, I just want to give a big shout out to Claude. Thanks, Claude. I really appreciate it. And Star Song, we absolutely appreciate you. We really do. I think that everybody deserves to be heard, until they say something where they don't deserve to be heard anymore. But I sort of this channel's based around hearing from everybody, and right. So yeah, I think that everyone deserves to be heard, and definitely, everybody's got something to contribute, even if some people, by contributing it, it shows how you shouldn't think. This man has something to contribute. It shows how you shouldn't think about things without sort of any kind of critical thinking whatsoever. And that'll become evident as we go along.
Precise measurements to Noah for exactly how big the ark should be.
And this is how you shall make it.
This is how you should make it. Where did they find this guy? Like, seriously. Is this God? Hello, God, is that you? Why is God like got... It feels like God had a stroke or something. This is how we should make it. Oh, look, Star Song, everybody does stupid stuff sometimes. I do stupid stuff sometimes. We've got to be kinder to ourselves on some of the, making mistakes.
The length of the ark shall be 300 cubits, its width 50 cubits, and its height 30 cubits.
And there you are. In God's instructions are the very precise measurements.
Okay, so when he says precise, when he says precise measurements, he means precise, like in cubits, which we don't know how like big that is. It is entirely possible that cubits could have varied completely. So precise measurements, we don't know what a cubit is. And was it precise to Noah? Well, a lot of it suggests from writings that a cubit was measured upon the person's, like whoever was measuring its length of their forearm. And so, it might not even been precise to Noah, because if you're building a massive boat and your foreman has a longer arm than you, it's not going to be precise.
Nice measurements for the ark. But you might be wondering, but what's a cubit?
Oh, we know what a cubit is. Do you know what a cubit is?
We don't use the cubit as a modern unit of measurement. But in the ancient world, the cubit simply referred to the length of a man's forearm from the elbow to the fingertip.
Yeah, and that's a problem. That's a problem. Because if you're saying that all these people worked on the ark, right? What's the problem? You don't have an empirical standard measuring system. Like, you're talking about building a boat where any kind of bad measurement is going to cause masses of problems.
Fingertip, roughly 18 inches. And being such a practical form of measurement, it was likely the most common unit of length in the ancient civilizations.
Yeah, and I love how he says it's precisely and then says it's roughly 18 inches. That's great. That's some great stuff right there. We know precisely how big it was. This amount of cubits, which is roughly, then how can your overall measurement be rough if your individual unit be precise, sorry. How can your overall measurement be precise if your individual measurement is just rough? How is that even possible? How is that possible?
Such as the Sumerians, the Babylonians, the Egyptian, and the Hebrew. Now, with the understanding that 1 cubit is 18 inches, or 1.5 feet, how big was the ark? In order to help us visualize what these dimensions mean, I am standing here next to the only full-scale, floating, modern-day replica of Noah's Ark.
Yeah, so this is a full-scale, floating, modern-day replica of the ark. So does anyone know the problem with this? When he says modern day, he's got a problem. Because he wants to say it's a replica, but it's a replica that, see how the bottom is sort of this different shade? That's because it has steel on the bottom. Yeah, this is a steel-bottomed boat. This is a steel barge that the guy built into an ark.
Noah's Ark, built based on the Bible specifications. The ark is 450 feet long, 75 feet wide, and 45 feet tall.
And it is made with steel, because you can't get a boat that big and have it just sort of, So yeah, so this boat was basically a steel barge that was built into an ark. And he sort of claims, hey, it would have been easier if it's wood. And they stopped me from no. You can't have a boat out of wood that big. It will take on water. It will. Structurally, the boat cannot be that big. And also, this floats around in a canal in Amsterdam. It doesn't. This isn't a seaworthy boat, in any case.
Feet tall. Inside there are 3 decks. Each deck has over 30,000 square feet, which means that the ark has a total of over 100,000 square feet. Its volume is equivalent to 1.5 million cubic feet, or approximately 17 Olympic-sized swimming pools.
Yeah, and the problem is that even with that amount of room, you still wouldn't fit the animals into it. This is why the creationists always sort of say, hey, the animals were infants, kind of thing, because you can't fit the animals into it. And so we have I just sort of have a thing here. Well, Cryptalk Origins, it's just a paper somebody did. It's not a peer-reviewed paper, but sort of some of the problems with fitting the animals aboard. So you've got what's a kind, and Woodmapper uses a genus as a kind, but kind must have been something different, more like a family kind of thing. So when they do their calculations, Woodmore and Morrison Whitcomb they're a sort of famous couple that have done papers on the ark in the creationist circles. So they exclude all animals except mammals, birds, and reptiles. But what about other stuff? The problem is when you add up all of this kind of stuff, and that's from Woodmore, who actually made sort of addition problems. Collecting each species instead of each genus would increase the number 3 to 4-fold. They leave off long extinct animals, right? So they're only talking about animals that are sort of current, but we know that there's been extinct animals. basically that they cannot fit these animals aboard the ark. They have to sort of say, hey, they were babies, or they were we leave off everything except certain mammals and reptiles and birds. We leave off everything else. That they and the whole idea that arthropods would survive in a flood situation. How in my experience, arthropods do not deal well with water. They don't. This is sort of what they have to say, and they have to sort of combine all of them together and then have them do accelerated extreme evolution from these kinds that were aboard the ark. So you've got all of the say the large cats and domestic cats coming from the same pair, and all of the horses coming, and ponies, and all of these coming from the same pair, like this rapid evolution that does not make sense. But even with all of their sort of objections, it still is problems. See, the total mass, assuming adults, is absolutely astronomical. It's not a case of whether you can physically fit them in. It's a case of whether the damn thing will float. That's the question. Because don't forget that buoyancy is based upon density, and density is based upon mass, not the size of them, like the total area divided by the total mass. It's just very, very strange. There's no way they could have fit everything on.
Now, while some of the specific construction details of this modern replica may be different from the actual ark that Noah built.
Yeah, like it's made out of steel at the bottom. You mean like that? You mean like that?
What this modern day representation does provide is an astounding perspective of the actual dimensions and scale of Noah's Ark.
I love how he's not giving any information how it's actually real. Like, no evidence whatsoever. They just assume it's real and say, hey, this guy built something that sort of duplicates it. No, it's not concrete. This is a different guy's sort of replica, but it is steel on the bottom. It definitely is steel.
Let's take this monumental structure and explore its size. Let's first try to put the ark's length, 450 feet, in perspective.
Yeah,
a convenient comparison is to think about some popular modern sporting venues. Take, for example, an American football field. The length of the ark is equivalent to the length of 1 1/4 of these fields, measuring from goalpost to goalpost. Or if you're a baseball fan, sitting in Yankee Stadium in New York, on the front row behind home plate, the 450-foot ark very nearly matches the distance from your seat to the farthest wall out in center field.
Yeah, I don't. It doesn't really matter. The question is whether it did exist. Like, they're sort of saying, hey, it was really big. That isn't a point in its favor. That's a point against. Like, it's
center field. Or maybe cricket is your game, and you're watching a test match from the grandstand at the historic Lord's Cricket Ground.
Oh, we're appealing to the Commonwealth. How nice! How nice! We're appealing to the Empire. Wow.
St. John's Wood, London. The ark would fill the length across the widest portion of the field.
Yeah.
Let's consider the ark's length compared to some famous.
The ark, like, that's if it exists. If it doesn't exist, then it doesn't really matter, does it? You know, this is the weird thing that they sort of go, okay, it's true. Now let's explain. Like, let's not explain how we know it's true. Let's just awe in wonder of the amazing thing that was done. It doesn't matter. If it wasn't true, nothing was done, and it wasn't the length of anything. And this is the reality of Noah's Ark. It's like, wow.
Compared to some famous historical structures across the world. Imagine the ark being stood on its end in a vertical fashion. And let's compare it first to the famous Leaning Tower of Pisa in Italy, completed in the 14th century AD.
This is the hilarity of it. Like, why? Why are we standing it on its end and comparing it to a building? It's not even a building. And plus, that building is made out of stone. Like, I don't know what they're trying to. I don't know what they're trying to prove with this. hey, if we stood the well, if you stood your imaginary friend on his head, it would be the size of a real person. So what? So what? I don't understand.
AD. It stands 183 feet tall and has a diameter of 49 feet.
I love how they like turn the picture to correct it. That's just fantastic.
If we now move to the country of China and the Lao Di Pagoda, completed in the 11th century AD, this pagoda stands 276 feet tall. Made of
and it's made of
brick and stone. It is the tallest existing pre-modern pagoda in China.
Yeah, it's made of brick and stone. Like, so what? I don't get their point. I don't understand their point. I really don't. It's like, hey, it's really big. That means that it's less chance of it being constructed. And the fact that your replica has a steel bottom is kind of like, I love how they skip over all of this stuff. Did Noah build it standing up? Is that what happened? I don't understand why they're doing this. I really don't.
In China. The two towers in Bologna, Italy, were completed in the early 12th century AD. These towers served as the inspiration for the architect Minoru Yamasaki, who designed the former World Trade Center towers in New York. The tallest of the two towers, the Asinelli Tower, stands 318 feet tall. Moving now to England, we find the Elizabeth Tower and its clock known as Big Ben, arguably one of the most recognizable clock towers in the world. It was completed in 1859.
Oh, are you marveling in wonder at the arc being stood on its end and it's taller than like some of the biggest buildings? Are you marveling at the achievements? I don't get it.
It stands 316 feet tall and has a 50-foot square base. Across the Atlantic in the United States, the famous Statue of Liberty, dedicated in 1886, stands 305 feet tall, from the ground to Lady Liberty's torch. The Cathedral of Antwerp in Belgium has a spire completed in the 16th century, extending 404 feet high.
Yeah.
In Washington, D.C., the Washington Monument is the tallest true obelisk in the world. Its pyramid-shaped capstone was placed in 1884 at a height of 555 feet.
Yeah. So apparently us mere humans can outbuild God. That's great. Even if you stood the boat on its end. I don't understand his point that he's getting at. He's not showing that the ark exists. He's basically going, marvel at how big it is. But did it actually exist? Because if it didn't exist, it's not a feat of engineering. It's not a feat of anything. It's a story. What are you talking about?
5 feet. It has a square base of 55 feet on its sides. Only 5 years after the Washington Monument was completed, the Eiffel Tower in Paris was finished, standing an amazing 986 feet tall, and was the tallest structure in the world for over 40 years.
Yeah, way bigger than your ark. What's your point? One's a wooden boat, one's a metal tower. Oh, I'm sorry, your boat has a metal bottom, so maybe it is sort of analogous in a certain way. I don't understand what his point is.
Now, the last two structures to show for comparison are ancient structures built thousands of years ago and were listed among the 7 wonders of the ancient world by Antipater of Sidon and Herodotus. The Lighthouse of Alexandria is known from both ancient writings and from underwater archaeological excavations. Approximately 400 feet tall, it was constructed in the 3rd century BC by...
Yeah, until ruined by earthquakes. I mean, it was burnt down before that. Well, no, that's the library at Alexandria. The lighthouse, yeah, but importantly enough, it's made of stone.
BC by Ptolemy I. It stood for 1,700 years until its structure was ruined by earthquakes. A replica now stands in Changsha, China. The Great Pyramid of Giza stands 455 feet tall.
Yeah.
It represents one of the most ancient existing structures in all the world.
I think what he's getting at here is that people before Christ, that people in the BC, had a ability to build big structures. And that is true. But the problem here is all of those structures are made out of stone. All of those structures are not like the Great Pyramid of Giza isn't being put to sea with a wooden hull. this is the thing that we've got to understand, is that when you're talking about hydrodynamics, we're not talking about just masonry. It's not the same thing. That we've got to understand that, yeah, people weren't stupid and they had amazing skills in construction. Sure. What they didn't have is amazing skills in hydrodynamics and boat building. We know they didn't because they couldn't get across the oceans, right? They thought that the world kind of ended at the end of the Mediterranean and then it was just ocean. They didn't know that there was other lands across it because they didn't have the necessary boat building experience to be able to build a boat to trust. So we know they didn't have that experience. The fact that you're saying, hey, people could build some big things back then, so the ark must be true, is just ridiculous. Like, just because the Great Pyramids of Giza got built doesn't mean that another thing got built. Like, that's not a thing.
It was the tallest known structure in the world for over 3,000 years. These comparisons can provide a relative sense of the length of the ark, which is quite long, but not unreasonable or surpassing our comprehension.
It doesn't surpass our comprehension, therefore it's true? What are you talking about? Like, this is the weirdest, like, the reality of the ark. It's basically just saying, oh, we've got a really cool story. I don't understand it. I really don't. You hit, what was that? You hit 666? Come on, you've got who hit 666? Oh, answers and atheism. Yeah, you've got to have a 666 stream. I swear that I did it. Definitely get him to do it. Who's that? Speed? Get Speed of Sound to do it. Definitely. Oh, congratulations, Al. Yeah, do a 69 sub special. Absolutely. If you shoot me a message, I'll be there.
Comprehension. Now let's consider the area marked out by the ark and the amount of deck space that the ark would provide. According to Genesis 6:16, the ark was divided into 3 decks, lower, second, and third. So if Noah were to make a visual inspection around all 3 decks, he would have to walk about 6/10 of a mile. If we now take our length and our width for each deck, we can...
Yeah, so 6/10 of a mile. That's great. So keep in mind that with all of this and all of those animals on board, they had a staff of 8. Think about that. A staff of 8, some of which were like, old people.
Each deck, we can calculate the square footage to be 33,750 square feet per deck, which means that the entire ark had a total of 101,250 square feet. Going back to our common sports comparisons, the ark would have had the same approximate area as 2 American football fields, or 21 basketball courts.
Yeah, so this is not a point in its favor, because you have to cover not that amount, just that amount of space, right? You've got to cover it with, old people, and you've got to take care of all the animals in that space. The more you look at it with 8 people, you have the problems of having a zoo, right? You have the problems of having a zoo, which is all of the dung, the feeding, the caretaking. You need to brush certain animals. They need certain things to be brought to them. They need certain enclosures. They need certain things to be able to get by. And not just that, but also that zoo is floating, and you've got 8 people. You could bear. I would be skeptical that you could run just a ship of that size made out of wood with 8 people, especially when it comes to what he sort of goes on to.
So we've discussed the length of the ark and the area included in the decks. But before we calculate its total internal volume, let's consider the end dimensions. 75 feet wide by 45 feet tall. These cross-sectional dimensions very nearly match the wingspan and the tail height of NASA's space shuttle.
Yeah. No, I know the Ark was a space shuttle. I'm totally on board. Sure, while we're making shit up, we might as well just go hog wild. Like, let's just, you know what, the Ark was a space shuttle. You know what? Let's go even further. The Ark was an international space station. Let's just, if we're gonna make stuff up, let's go for broke. The Ark was a trans-dimensional space station. Why not? Why not?
Shuttle. So if you were to open the end of the Ark and begin loading in the shuttles, you would be able to load in the shuttle Atlantis, then the space shuttle Discovery, then the shuttle Enterprise, and then the shuttle Endeavour would nearly fit up until its engines. So almost 4 NASA space shuttles would fit within the volume of the Ark. Now, in terms of transporting cargo, the Ark's immense volume would be equivalent to carrying 527 railroad boxcars. Or when calculated...
Yeah, do you think you could fit 2 of every animal on the Earth into 527 railroad boxcars? No. No. Absolutely not. Absolutely not. It's like the TARDIS. Yeah, no, I get you. Yeah. I think some interdimensional, tomfoolery on some level is being done here. I really do think so. This cannot be. It's just so ridiculous that this would fit into 527 boxcars. Really, that fit all the animals, extinct and living, on Earth. Really, you sure? Because I have doubts. I have extreme doubts. I'm sorry. I do. Call me skeptical.
When calculated, it comes out to be over 1.5 million cubic feet of internal space. Oftentimes, there are wild misconceptions about Noah's Ark. One of the first says that Noah's Ark is the largest floating vessel.
There's some wild misconceptions. It's just wild, Wow. Look, I see people mentioning the moon pool. This was done by I think these are related to Creation Ministry, right? So Creation Ministry doesn't get on board with Kent Hovind. So the moon pool is Kent Hovind's little fan fiction, and that one is so batshit insane. These people will not back that, as well as his ice canopy is another one of Hovind's crazy things. This isn't that bad. Like, Hovind is another level of craziness that is just out there. This isn't that bad.
Floating vessel to have ever been built. This is simply not true. Though it was the largest vessel at its time in history, there have been many ships...
No, it wasn't, because it didn't exist. Like, this is the thing. If it didn't exist, then it isn't the largest thing of anything, even at its time. And you've got stories like the Epic of Gilgamesh, which sort of describe the same events. The Atrahasa, which described the same events, but their boats were considerably smaller. This sounds like a retelling of a very, very, very old story. That the boat got bigger and bigger and bigger. It describes it in the Epic of Gilgamesh, but it's not as big, and it wasn't sort of an ark, it was a coracle.
There have been many ships built in the millennia afterward that have been comparable and even greater in size. Now, this should not discredit or lessen the Ark's extremely significant place in history, but instead it should bring into our view an accurate reality for the biblical proportions of Noah's Ark. Let's look at...
Do you think he's going to be accurate on that? Do you think he's going to sort of... Let's look at a few
historical ships to compare with Noah's Ark. Let's start with the Santa Maria, part of the trio of ships sailed by Christopher Columbus in the late 15th century.
Why? I mean, it's 60 feet long. Nobody's got a problem with the Santa Maria. The Santa Maria would definitely be seaworthy. The problem is with structures. The larger you get, the less tensile strength they'll have. So the tensile strength goes exponentially down with the larger you make it. It's why we can't build wooden boats the size of the purported ark. We can't do it. It's not possible.
15th century AD.
Well, that's not true. We can. It's just they perform so poorly that we don't do it anymore. And there's a very, very good reason why.
To cross the Atlantic Ocean to the Americas. It was approximately 60 feet long and carried a crew of approximately 40 men. At 227 feet, the HMS Victory is one of England's most well-known wooden warships. It is the oldest naval ship still commissioned, having seen action in the Napoleonic Wars.
Yeah, and the problem with that is it needs bilges. It needs bilges pumping because it will let on water. That's the problem with the Victory. We'll get to the Wyoming in a sec because he brings that up, which is insane because the Wyoming is a really good example of why we can't build wooden ships that big.
I docked in Portsmouth, England, as a museum ship. The early 20th century in the United States saw some of the last wooden sailing vessels built. At 330 feet long, the Wyoming was one of only a few six-masted schooners to be built.
Yeah, so the Wyoming isn't even as large as the Ark. The problem with the Wyoming, it needed steam-powered bilges because of the amount of water it would let on. So a bilge is basically a pump. What it does is it just pumps water from the bottom of the boat out the sides, basically. So Wyoming had a number of these steam-powered bilges, these automatic pumps which pumped water out. Things like the Victory, it needed handheld bilges, and people in those times with those big wooden ships would work the bilges, right? They would actually have to pump water out. The reason why is because once you get to a certain length of these ships, the planks will bow and they will twist, and no amount of sort of putting cork in between or trying to put in to seal the planks will work. They will let on water. And the bigger you make the boat, the more bowing will happen, and so the more water will let on. We even have barges that like bigger than the Ark made out of wood. The problem is they all need bilges in order to pump the water out. Now, the problem here isn't the size of the Ark. Really, it's not. That's not the problem. The problem is that everything we know about naval construction would say that those people would have needed pumps in order to get the water out that would inevitably come with a boat that big. Every single other instance of a boat anywhere near that size, even half that size, needs bilges. As far as I know, they did not have pumping technology back in those days. Call me crazy. There is nowhere in the Bible that says, and God said, make a pump using, I don't even know what they would use, using animal hide and wood to get rid of the water. Okay, maybe you could say, hey, they bailed the boat. Now, bailing is when you simply have a bucket and you just grab the bucket and throw it overboard. Okay, maybe they could keep it afloat for a year with constant bailing. Here's the problem. They had 8 people. How much bailing do you think it would have taken a boat that size to make? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of Deus Ex pump, like it's ridiculous.
To be built. The Wyoming sailed the eastern coast of the United States from
I love how he says the eastern coast. You know why it sailed the eastern coast of the United States? You know why it sailed the eastern coast of the United States? Oh, because when it went out to open water, it floundered. It filled up with too much water. That's why it sailed the eastern coast, because it could only go on coastal waters. Because every time it tried to take to the sea or an ocean, it just took on too much water and basically it couldn't really float. They had to pump it, and they basically got it into calmer waters. So the Wyoming was not an ocean-going vessel. It was a coastal vessel. Whoops.
From 1909 to 1924.
Oh, and I might add the Wyoming eventually floundered and sank due to taking on too much water. Whoops. So my question would be, how did Noah cope with the floundering problem, taking on too much water? I don't know. Was there a holy pump? Was there a miracle pump that pumped all the water out? I don't know. I should have dressed up. How does one dress? What, a beard? A beard? Like white beard? I don't know.
4.
I-
King Sneferus' boats, referenced on the ancient Palermo stone. If we now look back in the annals of history, we'll find ancient Egyptian inscriptions on this stone of a 100 cubit. That's a 150-foot wooden ship that was part of the 4th dynasty fleet of King Sneferu.
Yeah, for a start, that's a quarter of the size. That's for a start. Secondly, it only went on the River Nile. It didn't take to the ocean. Like, you're talking about two totally separate things. You're talking about an ocean-going barge as opposed to a long boat that was meant for like a canal boat or a river boat. Those two things are totally different. I mean, they're not totally different, of course, but what one has to put up with aside from the other is ridiculous. And plus, that's a quarter of the size. Like I said, the relationship between your structural integrity and size, what happens when the size exponentially lowers the structure? What does that mean? Well, exponentially means as you get longer, it gets much more. Like it sort of, so an exponential increase is like doing the squaring stuff, for instance. 2 squared is 4. 3 squared is 9. It exponentially gets bigger. So it actually gets more, as apart from multiplication, multiplicatively getting bigger. The structural integrity of a boat that size it's ridiculous. And to think that, hey, they built it back in before the days where we actually knew what we were doing. And we know the people back there didn't have sort of any nautical training or any kind of boat building experience. In fact, the Bible says that Noah was a man of the land. So we know that they didn't have the experience to do it. And they get around it by saying, hey, well, God just told them how to do it and he knew. Or it didn't happen. That's the other alternative.
King Sneferu, a matter of only hundreds of years after the flood. Later,
hundreds of years after the flood. Yeah, so they're just assuming the flood absolutely happened, even though there's not a shred of evidence for it.
In Egypt's 18th dynasty, a barge, possibly in excess of 200 feet.
Possibly in excess of 200 feet. Yeah, love that. Love that.
Known as Hatshepsut's barge, was constructed to transport large obelisks along the Nile. In the early years of the Roman Empire, Emperor Caligula had numerous large ships. One, called the Giant Ship, is recorded to be 340 feet long, possibly served as a barge to transport large structures from Egypt back to Rome.
Yeah, it just a barge. And then they probably had all kinds of problems. And that was in the Mediterranean, where the seas are pretty calm.
In the early 15th century AD...
And we don't know for sure that was the size of it. They're just sort of extrapolating on pictures and stories, which can be very misleading when someone is talking about sort of, recording how great Rome was and says they had a massive ship. It might not be accurate.
AD, the Ming dynasty established itself as a naval power. They constructed a large fleet of wooden ships, the largest in the range from 300 to 400 feet long. The ships were known as treasure ships and were used on numerous voyages to enhance the Ming's tributary system.
Yeah, and they were used for, again, navigating the Han and the Yangtze River. They weren't actually used out in the ocean. And a lot of these large ships, they do stick to coastal areas, and they have pumps, or they have men to bail them out and bilge them. Eric Wanda, 2-month membership. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate the support, mate. I've got nothing to say, so hello, everybody. Okay, everyone say hello to Eric. Eric is a supporter and is using his member chat. Feel free to send your member chats in. I'm more than happy to read them out. Is it an obligation? I don't know. Sure, let's say it is. Let's say it is.
The Zahir 1 is a modern vessel designed as a livestock carrier at 393 feet long and 69 feet wide.
So here's the thing. Here's the thing. You're basically comparing your wooden boat to a modern metal, like a steel ship. I don't I don't know why. Like, I've got no idea why. Because the problems that you're trying to address is, oh, well, it's completely feasible that it was that big because there's other ships were that big. The other ships had massive problems as well with taking on water as being one of them. Let's look at the Wyoming. Massive problems with taking on water. Yes, the Zahari didn't, but the Zahari is a steel modern ship. I don't understand how that makes your wooden boat any more feasible. It doesn't make any sense whatsoever.
Feet wide. Its deck space is only slightly less than Noah's Ark. And it is currently sailing the oceans, carrying thousands of animals between the international markets of Australia, South America, Middle East, and others.
And this sort of alludes back to the guy saying, hey, we have a replica, kind of. Yeah, I mean, it gets a bit of artistic license, but it's a replica of the Ark. But he had to build it out of steel. Like, the bottom is all steel. You can't build, like, this is the thing. But what is very telling is he omitted that point. Like, they didn't point out, hey, yeah, he did say, hey, the construction was different because they had to use modern tools and stuff, but the bottom was steel, and they omit that because they don't want to admit it. They don't want to have to say, hey, yes, the bottom is steel, because a wooden one probably wouldn't float and would have massive problems with water coming on. But, don't think about that. Think about how somebody built a replica. Don't think about it. Don't think about it.
East another. In particular, skeptics of the Ark have pointed specifically to the Wyoming schooner as representing the upper limit to the size of a wooden vessel. However, this criticism fails on two levels. Really? First, there are documented historical wooden vessels at and surpassing the 300-foot limit. Secondly, the Wyoming schooner sailed.
Well, it's not really a 300-foot limit. The Wyoming, as you can see, is 330. It's just that's the upper limit to building a wooden boat that will actually float, that will actually be able to take to the sea, or even the coast, or even a river. But what you've got to understand is that the more that the boat gets larger, the more exponentially the integrity of the vessel goes down, especially when you get waves breaking against it because of the bowing of the planks. You can't build something that big and have it maintain structural integrity. Like, I'm not saying it was impossible for the Noah's Ark to be built, although I think it's insanely unlikely that some guy in post pre Roman Empire built it. What I'm saying is that you build something that big, you have massive problems that can be addressed. Like, don't get me wrong, that like the Romans could have addressed the problems with water coming on board through their wooden ships and things like that. Okay, fine. The problem is that you can't, because you've got 8 people to run this damn thing. That's my point.
Sailed and performed its duties for over 14 years, while the Ark only
and then sunk, and then took on water and sunk. Why didn't you mention that? Like, that's the thing. It's so weird that he just goes, oh, it performed for over 14 years, then took on water and sank.
Ark only needed to operate for 1 year's time. Now, in the last 150 years, advancements in the construction of metal ships and ocean liners has seen the production of enormous vessels like the Great Eastern, the Titanic, the Queen Mary, and any number of modern-day cruise ships.
What do those have in common? I wonder. What do all of those have in common? Let me think. Could they be made out of steel, perhaps? No, that wouldn't be it. No. Oh, they all had radar. That's it. That's what's keeping them afloat. The lack of understanding is just like they just want to say, oh, well, there's boats today that are bigger than the Ark. That's not the problem. That's not the problem. The problem is that it was made of wood. That's the problem.
Modern-day cruise ships. These ships have become essentially floating cities with thousands of travelers, crew, and a multitude of onboard destinations.
And this is the thing that you get from the creationist side, and this is the thing. You get objections to we bring up these problems, and their objections have nothing to do with the problem. The problem is not No one could build a boat that big. The problem is no one could build a boat that big out of wood and it would survive a global flood. That's the problem. Especially because it's raining all that time. It's taking on water. Like, it's not just the very specific thing that you want to address. Oh, you claim no one could build a boat that big, but we have boats that big today that are like floating cities. That's not the complaint. That's not the objection to your story. The objection to your story is no one can build a boat that big out of wood and have it survive a rough sea situation. That's it. I have, yes, I even have that game, I believe. Is that the one that like is basically a survival Honey, I Shrunk the Kids? Because I like that game. It makes me feel like I'm playing Honey, I Shrunk the Kids.
Of onboard destinations. However, in terms of wooden ships, the Ark does rank among the largest in history. This has led...
No. It's not history. It's its story says that it's the largest ever built. So it's kind of it is way too large. Our current understanding of building wooden ships, it's way too large. Like just way too large. Especially when it's laden to the brim with freaking animals. Like just piled up with animals.
This has led some to claim that even though the Ark's size is not unreasonable, it was still too advanced a vessel for Noah to build.
Well, this ties into the objection. So the objection is, and I'll state it again to be really clear, the objection is that no one can build a wooden boat that big and it can handle an ocean. Like that's the objection, right? Because we do have wooden barges that big. But they need to be bilged because they take on water, and in an ocean situation, especially when there's flooding and rain, it's going to take on even more water. The thing would flounder and sink. So the objection isn't that it's too advanced. Like it's too advanced for us to do today. If we built something of the Ark's size out of wood today and took it to the ocean or took it to a place where it was raining and any kind of sea, it would sink. That's the problem. We can't do it today, and we couldn't do it then. Like it's not practical to use just wood. It's not practical
for Noah to build, because he would have needed understanding of physics, calculus, structural analysis, and naval engineering to have designed and built such a vessel.
Well, yeah, there's that as well. I mean, that is a minor critique. I do, nobody had that knowledge back then. And if they did, why weren't they building other ships, like smaller ships? Like, so the thing is that this person apparently came from a culture that wasn't known for any naval designs. They weren't, Canaan at the time wasn't building any fleets. It wasn't like you talk about the cultures that had naval technology, like you talk about the Hellenic Greeks and the Carthaginians and they're seafaring nations. They're nations that sort of put to sea, but not the Canaanites. Their culture didn't. So it's incredibly unlikely he would have the knowledge in order to do that. But that's a minor complaint to the actual claim that this boat took to the seas made out of wood at that size. That's the major complaint is engineering, not that they wouldn't have the knowledge to do it.
This perspective, however, suffers from several misconceptions. First, it assumes that Noah himself was the originator for the Ark's scale and design.
Oh, God designed it. God designed it. Perfect design. God designed it. With one window, indeed. No bilges. What are you talking about?
But according to the Bible, this is not the case. It was God who initiated and conveyed the Ark's plans.
There you go.
Noah was given divine direction and instruction and then expected to contribute his labor in carrying out the task.
Yeah, God done it. Hey, It's a solution for everything. Seems incredibly unlikely that anybody could design such a thing. God done it.
Second, there is often an overarching misunderstanding that says, well, hasn't man had a long evolutionary history with a gradual growth of both intellectual and physical capacities? This concept of a gradual evolutionary ascent for man is contrary to the biblical concept of man's origin.
Yeah, so for some reason in this arc story, we're hassling evolution. Like he seems to misunderstand that historians go back and they look at how shipbuilding has developed over the years, like those those seafaring nations like Carthage and the Greeks and things. We can see the development of their naval vessels showing a gradual understanding and progression towards, sort of modern naval technology. Sorry, just hydrating. Don't forget to hydrate. Like we see that they gradually progress towards getting better and better ships. Like we examine the very early Greeks and the later Greeks, and their ships had developed over time. But what we don't see is this coming out of Canaan, because they weren't really, they had boats, they had fishing vessels, they weren't really a seafaring nation like Carthage, for instance, that they did a lot of trade. They traveled around in ships, that they did this stuff. The Greeks prided themselves on their seagoing nature, but not from the area that we're talking about. So sort of what, according to the sort of the Noah's Ark story, one guy just suddenly had all this knowledge and built the boat, and then all of it was forgotten again. Like, obviously, if the story's true, then that wiped out all the people. But this knowledge wasn't kept by Noah and used later in Canaan to sort of instruct people how to build boats, because afterwards they didn't have that knowledge either. Maybe he was too drunk. We don't know. But it's highly unlikely, because they didn't have the seafaring knowledge before or after. You would think that Noah would pass down this incredible knowledge of boat building to his descendants, but no, apparently he just got drunk and forgot it for some reason. The evolutionary problem, and this is this guy's misunderstanding, because that's not the evolutionary problem, is that if you are to fit these animals on, you're going to have very, very basal or very sort of, generic animals, and they're going to have to evolve insanely quickly to become all the different species of animal that we see. That's the evolutionary problem, that you've got no evolution. You have the ark, all these kinds, these basal creatures get put on board, and then they evolve at light speed to make all the species that we know today in, a few thousand years. That's the evolutionary problem. So he doesn't address that.
Man's origin. And it unnecessarily confuses the actual time frame for the early accounts of Genesis. The accounts of Adam and Eve, Cain and Abel, Enoch, Methuselah, and Noah were not tens of thousands of years ago, let alone millions. Noah did not live at a time.
I don't think they were around at all. That's the thing, that the Adam and Eve, we know genetically that wasn't a thing. I mean, I'm not saying there wasn't people, one named Adam and one named Eve. There could have been. But, them the only humans on Earth is just ridiculous. It's ludicrous.
Noah did not live at a time of club-carrying, cave-dwelling Stone Age men who lacked the abilities of fire, agriculture, or linguistics.
I mean, fire was a pretty early discovery. I'm not sure, if you're talking about cavemen kind of thing who lived in cave. Well, for a start, they probably didn't live in caves. That's the thing. They probably lived on the savannah. They just drew on cave walls, and secondly, they probably had an awareness of fire. I don't know.
Linguistics. According to the Bible's account of creation, mankind was created and endowed with reasonable faculties.
Oh, it was endowed with boat building. There you go.
including communication, socialization, critical thinking, and ingenuity.
Hey, I know some humans today that don't have critical thinking, yourself being one of them.
So in what time period did Noah live? Well, let's consider a basic historical timeline to give us a context. Based on both biblical and secular history, the time from today back to the life of Jesus is approximately 2,000 years.
Yeah, sure. Let's just give him that one. Seriously. I
From the time of Jesus in the 1st century AD back to the patriarch Abraham is again about 2,000 years, based on the genealogies of New Testament and the corroboration of secular history.
Yeah, I don't think secular history corroborates Abraham. I think that we sort of have it as a figure in, I'm not sure even history. It sort of is mythology that says Abraham was the patriarch of the Jews. I'm not sure we have any evidence outside the Bible that is actually true, or the Torah, of course, that is actually true. I think it is just it's a person that has been talked about. Like we don't have any stories that Hercules is true either, but you could call it a historical figure. Whether or not that is accurate, we don't know. There could possibly have been. Sure, let's just give it to him as well. Abraham. Okay, let's just give it to it as well.
History. Now, from Abraham back to Noah and the ark can be approximated to be on the order of hundreds of years. And from Noah back to the first created couple, Adam and Eve, was a little over 1,600 years. Thus, we can see...
Yeah, so Adam was 4,000 BC. So this is the 6,000 years old kind of thing. The Earth is 6,000 years old, which is just so ridiculous.
That the timeline of the flood and Noah's life was between 4,000 to 5,000 years ago. In secular history terms, the general description for this time period, 4,000 to 5,000 years, is the Bronze Age, which gains this name from the copper and bronze tools.
Kevin Sorbo, unfortunately, yeah. I heard he lost his crap and did like a whole bunch of Christian movies and stuff. It's just Kevin Sorbo. Disappointed. I love it. I love it.
And bronze tools that were being used.
Yeah, okay. Well, I don't think it's contentious that the time that he's talking about, that 3,000 or say 2,300 BC or so was the Bronze Age. Sure, I don't have a problem with that. What I contend is that the Bronze Age did not last like a few hundred years. Like people were using bronze for an insane amount of time. And I might add, we've got civilizations that are older than that. Like we've got civilizations like the Egyptians that went back past 3,000 BC that continued uninterrupted until 1,000 something. Like what are you talking about? The Bronze Age, yeah, lasted a few hundred years. No, it lasted like hundreds of thousands of years, or at least tens of thousands of years.
Biblical history concurs with this general naming convention because it specifically speaks of a descendant of Cain named Tubal-Cain, who was a relative contemporary of Noah, and who the Bible says was an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron.
But not steel, though. Not steel. Yeah. Craftsman and sure. So what?
Recognizing that Noah lived during the aptly named Bronze Age provides a good historical setting and helps us recognize what types of materials and resources Noah had access to use. First and foremost, God's instructions for the design of the ark.
Yeah, I'm sure he had steel plumbing, like the stuff above your head there. I'm sure he had steel piping going all through. Oh yeah, no, I'm sure he had like electricity to do the signs and stuff on there. No, totally. Yeah, totally.
Design of the ark clearly define the primary building material, wood.
Yeah, and do we have like steel nails in order to put there in? No, we didn't. Oh, okay.
And Noah needed lots of it. Noah would have had to gather wood for a large variety of structural purposes.
What kind of wood? We have no idea.
Large load-bearing beams for the primary framing of the ark's structure. lumber that would form the exterior of the ark, lumber for the rooms or nests, various pens, corrals, cages, decking lumber for internal flooring of the lower, second, and third decks. Since there would be only one door to enter, internal ramps or stairs would provide a means to move between decks.
I want to know how the termites were stored. Can somebody answer me that? How they take care of the termites? Because it just seems like a termite hazard waiting to happen.
Now, a subtle yet important aspect is that for all of the construction and obvious woodworking, Noah would have needed a good number and variety of tools. So what types of tools would have existed in his day? We've already established that even in terms
bronze or iron tools if he was lucky. Iron wasn't very common back then. Like, they might work in iron, but it wasn't something that was incredibly common. Probably bronze tools, I would say.
Secular and biblical history, Noah lived in the so-called Bronze Age, meaning the use of copper smelting and alloys. But let's also consider some additional biblical references to various vocations that were in existence.
Yeah, and bronze is an alloy of copper and tin. Most tin came from the area north of the Mediterranean. So did he have access to tin? We don't know. We have no idea.
That were in existence even prior to Noah. Farming and agriculture has existed since the very creation of man in the Garden of Eden. Adam and Eve were given the original directive to tend and keep it. And after their sin and subsequent removal from the garden, Adam was to till the ground. Reasonably then, Adam's oldest son, Cain, was also called a tiller of the ground. What this means...
Yeah. And Noah described as a man of the land. I sure they had agriculture. We've had agriculture for a long, long time. That's not the problem.
Is that prior to Noah, for over 1,000 years, mankind had worked, tilled, and cultivated crops. Though we don't know specifics, 1,000 years is a long time to develop processes and tools to carry out your trade.
No, it's not. No, from no agriculture to agriculture, 1,000 years is not a long time to develop your trade. No, it's not. Like, agriculture developed so slowly. I don't know why this guy is saying that.
Great. We also see within the first family the vocation of cattle raising and shepherding. Adam's second son, Abel, was described as a keeper of sheep, and we find him in Genesis 4 bringing the first fruits of his flocks as a sacrifice to God. We know the skill of tending flocks and raising cattle continued throughout subsequent generations because we read of Cain's descendant, Jabal, being described as the father of those who dwell in tents and have livestock.
I don't understand what this has got to do with anything. You know, we know, like, we can grant that we know they had agriculture, we know they had animal husbandry. I don't understand what that's got to do with the ark. Like, what has it got to do with the ark? What, that he could feed himself? I don't get it. I really don't.
And have livestock. Jabal had two other brothers, Jubal and Tubal-Cain, who provided for us a glimpse of some other unique and skilled vocations. The Bible describes Jubal as the father of all those who play the harp and flute.
Okay, so the ark had a band. Is that what we're saying? I don't understand. Is he trying to argue that because there were knowledge of agriculture, there was knowledge of music, there was knowledge of animal husbandry, then they had to have knowledge of like advanced shipbuilding? Because that is a complete non sequitur. Like, just because they had and their agricultural knowledge was not that fantastic, like not the knowledge that we have today. I don't understand. I don't get it. Like, just because they had primitive agriculture and they had primitive animal husbandry and primitive musical instruments, like, I don't see them having an electric guitar here. It means that they had a modern understanding of shipbuilding. I don't get how that tracks. I don't get how that argument works.
And flute. The production of musical instruments, such as stringed instruments and wind instruments.
Sure, I will grant all of those things. They had knowledge of agriculture. They had knowledge of musical instruments. They had knowledge of animal husbandry. Now show they had knowledge of advanced shipbuilding techniques. This is the thing. All of these things we know existed at the time. What we know they didn't have, And we know that they had knowledge of shipbuilding. They had the people of the lands around that area. They could build boats for fishing. They could build boats for transportation. They were coastal boats. Like, we're not saying they didn't have boats. What we want to know is that they have the advanced shipbuilding techniques in order to build a construction that large and implement it in a way that would survive the waters of a global apocalypse. That's the question.
Wind instruments requires precision, both in craftsmanship and tooling. The Bible describes Tubal-Cain as an instructor of every craftsman in bronze and iron. Metalworking and blacksmithing represent very important and applicable trades to the construction efforts in which Noah would be engaging. Considering Noah's historical context and
yeah, but that's different than hydrodynamics and like sort of modern boat building techniques. That's a different story. You're sort of equating, hey, because they could build, like, make a nail, they could build a structure that we can't, or, you know, would not be feasible today. That doesn't follow. I don't have a problem with them being able to build, you know, simple boats or boats that sort of we knew they had at the time. What we're sort of saying is, did they have the ability to build a structure that we probably would have difficulty making float today?
Context and these various occupations that are known to have existed, it's reasonable to consider that Noah had many potential metal tools and implements at his disposal. Likely heavy tools like axes, hammers, mallets, pry bars, and maybe some forms of wood-cutting saws. Considering the reference to musical instruments like harps and flutes, there may have been light-duty tools like punches, chisels, or clamps. Though the primary structure of the ark was wood, various metal fasteners might have been used.
Yeah, what are those fasteners made out of there? Would that be steel? Yeah, so, I mean, this is the hilarity, that the man is sitting there talking about using, like, copper and bronze and iron, and he's sitting there with steel screws through the boat in the background. This is the hilarious thing. He's sort of standing where it disproves what he's saying.
Might have been used by carpenters and woodworkers, such as nails and spikes, strappings and bracings. One final comparison to consider.
Yeah, and I think as Beamsy pointed out, like, salt water and iron do not go well. Copper is very, very you could make it out of bronze. Does bronze rust in salt water? It is resistant to saltwater corrosion, but you can't use copper and iron for that.
Consider that provides great insight into the potential capabilities that existed during the Bronze Age, and for mankind's ingenuity in general, is the Great Pyramid of Giza. As the only surviving member of the original 7 wonders of the ancient world, the Great Pyramid stands as an amazing example of mankind's capabilities.
Yeah, but the Great Pyramids isn't like, the pyramids aren't putting to sea. I don't know if you realize this, but it's basically a stone structure. Like, we're not saying that the people of that time couldn't build it. And the Great Pyramid of Giza, hold on, let me look that up. I thought that required hundreds of thousands of people building it. Hold it. Okay, so roughly 100,000 people worked in 3-month spells to finish the structure. Like, you know, this is the thing that they sort of do. They say, oh, well, you know, this got built. Yeah, with 100,000 people working on it for 20 years. Yeah, so they sort of give about 55 years to build the ark. Like, so yeah, we're not saying it couldn't have been built, but you're comparing things that are not comparable. Like we're talking about masons building something like a pyramid, like a standing structure, to building a seaworthy vessel. It's not even it's not the same thing.
abilities. Though it was not the very first pyramid built, the Great Pyramid is one of the earlier known and represents a man-made structure completed within a span of only hundreds to 1,000 years after the time of the flood. Having the plans, the materials, and the tools is sufficient to start a task, but some question whether Noah had the time or
Yeah,
ability.
it's kind of weird that everybody on Earth was wiped out, and then like just from an internal critique, um like how were everybody wiped out and then 100,000 people in 100 years were able to complete the Great Pyramid? You got a bit of a problem there, don't you? How fast were these people breeding is what I want to know. When was the Great Pyramid built? 2600 BC? Wait, when was the flood? 2300? Yeah, so a few hundred years later. Yeah, so somehow 8 people became 100,000 people in like a few hundred years. Well, every woman had to have 64 kids. Well, if we're making stuff up and Noah is 900 years old or whatever, why not? Why not?
Time or ability to complete the ark. If we look back for one moment to our discussion of the Great Pyramid of Giza, its massive stone structure actually encompasses a volume over 50 times.
Well, it gets worse because it's not just the 100,000 people it took to build the pyramid. You also need all the people to support them, all of the sort of the people to produce food, the people it was a civilization that was happening around them as well. Like there were people trading, there were people in charge, there were, we're really looking at a civilization that numbered in the millions. Throughout the entire civilization, not just in this one spot at the Pyramid of Giza. So it becomes even worse because you're sort of looking. And we know other civilizations were around at the time. The Akkadian from Sargon of Akkad was around at the time. That was about 1 million people.
Were 50 times that of the ark. It's estimated that there are approximately 2.3 million stone blocks, each weighing an average of 2.5 tons. The blocks were cut and transported from numerous quarries, some nearby and some many miles away. They were then moved, raised, and precisely installed into place. When we consider the ark, the wood composition would have been far easier to gather, cut, and install.
What wood? We don't know. So here's the thing that I mentioned earlier. Basically, the Bible says it was gopher wood. Now, you might be asking, well, what's gopher wood? We don't know. That's the thing. Nobody knows what gopher wood is. It just says gopher wood. We don't even know what kind of wood that is. So we don't know about its structural integrity because we have no idea.
Install than the stone blocks of the pyramid. Although the specific details of Noah's day-to-day construction are not recorded for us in the Bible, it does describe the general requirements given to Noah and the final results of the ark saving.
Oh, I think they've got a live goat in the background. That's handy. I feel sorry for the goat. Poor goat's got to live its life on a frigging wooden boat that, what the hell? Let the goat free. # free the goat.
saving all that was on board.
Thus Noah did,
Thus
according to
Noah did.
all that God commanded him, so he did.
For the construction, there are numerous reasonable options that would have aided Noah. First, the time frame. Noah had to complete the task is usually referred to as being in the range of 100 years.
No, there was a. It's animatronic. What the hell?
We gauge this from Noah being 500 years old when he and his wife began to have their sons.
Oh, yeah, no, he was 500 years old when he began to have this. I don't know how they get through this with a straight face. Noah was 500 years old when he started to procreate. Nothing seems wrong about that at all. Just no, that's perfect. I don't know how they say this with a straight face. Oh, Noah was 500 when he started to have children. What the?
Of their sons in Genesis chapter 5. And then the flood came when he was 600 years old in Genesis chapter 7.
Yeah, no, I'm sure. Or it's just bull crap. That's the other option. It could just be bull crap. Have you thought about that option? Have you thought about that? I want Noah's Viagra, mate, because that is doing some heavy lifting right there.
Genesis chapter 7. And 100 years is a long time to work on any project. Second, could Noah have had help? Since Noah, his wife, his 3 sons, and their wives were all ultimately saved on the ark, it's usually understood that they were all involved.
Yeah, so 8 people. 8 people apparently did all the maintenance, cleaning on the ark, made meals for the entire group, did the caretaking of all of the animals, the cleanup of all of the animals, the necessary duties to feed, water, and clean up after every single animal there. They also they did bilging or bailing to get the water out, any kind of necessary water excavation, all of that was done by 8 people. Bullshit. I'm sorry, that's the only way to say it. The fact that you think that 8 people could have done all of those duties, like all of the duties of a massive zoo, as well as all of the duties of a massive boat, as well as all of the additional problems that would come with having a wooden boat that big, if you think they could do that, you are out of your mind. I'm sorry, they can't.
Were all involved in the preparation process. But in addition, Noah's father, Lamech, and grandfather, Methuselah, were alive until just prior to the time of the flood. And each of these patriarchs had other sons and daughters. Could Noah's father, grandfather, uncles, or other family have helped? Or could Noah have hired laborers, even skilled laborers from nearby communities and cities?
Yeah. So the thing is that it doesn't really matter how many he hired. Like the population wasn't around that area to be able to build a thing that big. I mean, it's not a very big contentious issue. I wouldn't die on that hill to say, hey, there's no way he could have gotten the manpower to build the damn thing. That's not really the contentious issue, but it is a bit of a problem. Like, we're not talking about a civilization like the Egyptian civilization, which built the Great Pyramids, where it is a pharaoh that has determined he wants to do this project and has commanded people to do it. It's just a dude who's apparently a farmer, Noah. He's a man of the land who somehow affords all of these people. Yeah.
And cities, potentially. Third, in regards to even gathering the materials, the known vocations of farming, shepherding, and blacksmithing probably depended on other existing trades and services like marketing.
Okay, yeah, no, and Peter, I totally get what you're saying. In a movie with Russell Crowe, the Watchers helped him, yeah, which were the angels, apparently. And it's really funny, and I do have to tell a story from my own background. My family is Catholic, so they're religious, and I remember them talking about that and sort of saying, hey, we didn't like the way the angels were portrayed. We don't feel that the angels were portrayed in a particularly realistic manner because they were these rock beings kind of thing. I'm like, okay, but deep down I'm thinking that's your problem. Like all of the problems with the ark and the global flood and, the timeline and there's all of these problems. And the way the angels were portrayed was your problem. I don't get it. Like, that would be the least of my problems. Like, I don't understand. I don't understand. Like, of all the problems of the ark, well, the angels weren't depicted very well. That's your problem. Not the 500-year-old dude, 600-year-old dude, not the boat, wow.
Services like marketplaces to sell and trade goods, woodworking and carpentry, mining of ores for smelting. Even during Cain's life, we read of him building a city and calling it after his son, Enoch. Could Noah have purchased, traded, or bartered for needed lumber and materials? Assuming a 10-hour workday, there are over 3,650 working hours per year, which means that Noah had 365,000 working hours in his 100-year time span.
Yeah, that people don't live that long. All of this is based.
If we then multiply this by 4, considering Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth, then there were nearly 1.5 million man-hours. If we add Noah's wife and the wives of his sons, then there were over 2.5 million working hours to gather materials, construct, and prepare the internal dwellings. This modern-day replica of Noah's Ark was built within 20,000 man-hours. Of course, there were many modern-day technologies and resources utilized.
Sure. Yeah, there were a lot of them, as we could see as he stood next to steel fixtures and stuff. Yeah.
But Noah had 125 times this amount of time, only accounting for the time his family would contribute. The Bible's account of the structure and size of Noah's Ark places it as a perfectly sufficient vessel for its unique task.
Okay, so perfectly sufficient vessel. So I want to show you something, and the creationists they do sort of say, will studies show that it was like well designed and well built kind of thing. And I want to show you the kind of crap they get up to, right? So Creation Ministries that produced this, I believe, they've got a South Korean study into it. I will share that. So this is a safety investigation of Noah's Ark in a seaway. And you can see all of the names here. They're actually South Korean. Hyung, Lee, they're all very Korean names. So basically, they studied the safety of Noah's Ark. Now, this isn't a peer-reviewed official paper. Just keep that in mind. This is something that Creation Ministry commissioned, right? So it might seem like they come to the conclusion in it, if you go down to the bottom, that in conclusion, it believed to have a reasonable beam to draft ratio for the safety of the hull, and crew and cargo in the high winds. The voyage limit of modern passenger ships reveals that it could have navigated sea in conditions with waves higher than 30 meters. Yeah, not really, because it would still take on water, but let's put that aside for 1 second, okay? So how did they reach that conclusion, right? So hull forms, hull 1 had sufficient overturning stability and all this. This revealed that the Ark had the second best hull design with the best hull design, etc. So here's the thing. What they did, right, because we don't know the exact dimensions of the hull. So what they did is they listed a whole bunch of different hull designs kind of thing, and then picked the best one to say, hey, this is what the Ark was, right? Because they don't know exactly what the dimensions were. So they kind of just picked out, oh, well, this is the best performing one. So it doesn't actually say whether it could or could not be seaworthy. It doesn't actually say that. What they did is they compared it to modern vessels and said, hey, the Ark must have been this one because it is the one of the best ones. So So the whole idea is that it doesn't just matter. All that they measured was the legs, the length, width, and berm, and the depth, basically, the beam. So that's length, width, or the beam is the width, the length, width, and depth of it, and said, hey, these similar ones have a good length, width, and depth. They're fine, but there's more to ship dynamics than just those three things. There's more to it. So it doesn't, I guess I'm trying to get across to you, it doesn't really address the issue. And it's sort of a backwards way of going about it. Oh, Eric Wanda, 5 readerships from Eric. Thank you so much, Eric. I really appreciate it, mate. It's been a rough week for me, and that's really nice to see. I really do appreciate that, mate. It has hit Peter Guns, Spilkub von Sparta, Joel Hathaway, Simos Fun. Congratulations, Simos. There you go. Thank Eric for that one. And Big Thing Flying Wayne. Thanks, Eric. Really appreciate it, mate. It's really good to see. So winner, chicken dinner. Everybody enjoy your emotes and benefits. There you go.
Unique task. Its massive size has established its important purpose throughout history. Yet in the context of various...
It's not historical. Like it's sort of, it dwells in a place that is mythological, where it could be true. We don't know if it is. Like it certainly it has a lot of problems. So it really is not historical. It's mythological. Like it could be true that Agamemnon of the ancient Greeks sailed across to try and rescue Helen, in Troy, but we don't know if that's true either. Oh, Beamsy, thank you so much. I really appreciate it, mate. There you go. Thank you, everybody. As I said, it's been a hard week, and thank you. And who was hit? Jeff C gets an readership. Darren Delaney, congratulations. You're getting one. Andrew Christopherson is getting one. Hopefully I pronounced that right, Andrew. Sorry, mate. Per Aspera ad Astra is getting a readership. And Jason Hyatt. Let's not forget about Jason. Congratulations, everybody. Winners, everyone, one and all. Yeah, thank Beamsy for that one. Yeah, thanks, Beamsy. That's awesome.
Context of various historical structures.
Oh yeah, historicity. Yeah. So like some of these things, they're not really history. We can't really say that because the Bible says there was this, then it is history. There's a lot of conflation in creationists of saying, hey, it is history because it says this. No, it's mythology. And that doesn't mean to say that all mythology, like there's definitely no person in history called Achilles because it's mythology. No, that's not the case. It may be a person, but we're saying that they cannot be verified, and the stories have some kind of elements that are... did you just do another... Oh, for Christ's sake. I'm not complaining, honestly, Beamsy. I'm sorry. I'm not complaining. Thank you so much. I really do appreciate it. Blaster Master gets readership. Murder Birder gets readership. Delicate Titanium gets readership. Ethereum Tool gets a readership. And Pragmatic Crystal, you hit Pragmatic. Congratulations, Pragmatic. Thank Beamsy for that one. Thank you so much, Beamsy. I do appreciate it. Cheers, mate. Here you go, Beamsy. Just for the record, have a bonk from me. I love that emoji. Yeah, it really is. 1, 5, or 50. Really? Yeah, you're right. No, it's okay. Thank you so much, all the admins. Yeah, maybe it's programmed to hit the ad. I don't think so. There's plenty of admins that haven't been hit, so I don't think so. I think it's just random. Yeah. So they sort of make this conflation on what is history and what is mythology, and this definitely falls under mythology. We don't have any historical record of this. We have a religious text saying it happened. That isn't history, but that they love to conflate it.
Structures and boats, the ark's dimensions are not unreasonable to have been completed using the materials God instructed in the time God provided with the resources Noah had available.
The resources Noah had available, like what Gopher would, which we don't know what it was. Beamsy, there's another 5 readerships. I should just leave this up on the freaking screen, to be honest with you. Thank you so much, Beamsy. I should just leave this up for all time if they're just going to keep coming, quite frankly. Colin Castner gets a readership. Mr. Anderson, nice shot, gets a readership. Kiwi Burb, congratulations. You two are in on the readerships. Stoic gets a readership. Peter Guns, absolutely. Shout out to all the wonderful mods. Yeah, absolutely. I think I don't give enough credit to my mods. I really have to thank them more. Okay, Beamsy, don't get too crazy. Hayward Jeb Looney gets a readership. Congratulations, winners for everybody. And Skeptics and Scoundrels does 5 readerships. We have who'd you hit, Eric? Who'd you hit? Tristan Holberg gets hit for a Skeptics and Scoundrels readership. C3P Hole. Oh, I love that. Okay, C3P Hole gets gifted a readership. You made me read out all of the random weird names. That's great. I love it. Anti-Herbalist Hervensalo. Anti-Hervensalo. I'm so sorry I mispronounced that. Was gifted a readership. Super Squid Hunk was gifted a readership. Unapologetically Chrissy was gifted a readership. Yeah, don't you dare apologize for that. Don't you dare apologize. Absolutely. Winners, chicken dinners. And Beamsy is gifting 5 more readerships. I'll never get back to the video. This is crazy. Beamsy, don't go nuts. Stephen M. Hawley gets a readership. Michael Fracker gets a readership. Nana Blooms, actually, Nana Blooms, I haven't talked Nana Blooms for ages, gets a readership. BSD Box gets a readership. And hold it, I lost it. Tramp, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, stamp. Wow, what a name. Tramp, abandon all hope, ye who enter here, was gifted a readership. Congratulations. Winner, chicken dinner. God, I can't even say it anymore. This is insane. Was that it? Oh, Maximiliano, how could I forget about you? Visha, Maximiliano Visha, thank you so much. That's awesome. So, see that pronunciation of the name? Visha. Well done. I'm trying. I really am. Ashton Richards gets a readership. Doorknob Head gets a readership. Doorknob Head, congrats. Brandon Smith gets a readership. The Flying Scotsman gets a readership somewhere. The Trying Scotsman, I do apologize, wrong name, was gifted a readership by Maximiliano Visha. And Ryan Donovan was gifted a readership by Maximiliano. Thank you so much, Maximiliano. I really appreciate it, mate. I really do. And Yahooligan says, I don't think anyone needs a new membership, so here now. Thank you so much, Yahooligan. Really appreciate the $2 Canadian. Fantastic. I think I'm through them. Awesome. You are in the Matrix. I think I'm in the Matrix right now. Everything feels very surreal. This man makes me feel surreal, but the arc is definitely surreal.
Available.
Okay, so that's the end of the video. So the takeaway of this is that I feel like this wasn't sort of the reality of Noah's flood in order to convince people of the reality. It's kind of just apologetics for those who believe already. And we get a lot of this. So many videos, and the ones that I went through and tried to find, and I really did try to find a, sort of a Hovind-esque sort of, oh, this is how we get around this problem. And we have the canopy to get around the heating problem. We have all of this. Yeah, sure, Mr. Anderson, go for it. In fact, I will do it for you. Mr. Anderson is going fantastic, and absolutely do subscribe to Mr. Anderson, because he is doing fantastic, and love his take on debates and things. And Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels, do go and subscribe to him as well. I do remember seeing him come up for giving out readerships. So I'm going to link you to that one too, because Skeptics and Scoundrels is another person doing amazing stuff, challenging the arguments of people. One of these two has a lot more confrontational approach. It's up to you whether you think that Eric or Mr. Anderson. I'll let you guess which one has the more confrontational approach. You can guess and work it out yourself. But yeah, this is sort of a video directed towards people that already believe. And what is interesting to me is that they tailor the information they give out to avoid the kind of questions that the skeptic would have. They will selectively give information to their believers, omitting the stuff that are obvious problems, where you would hope that the skeptic would say, hey, and a lot of the time we are doing that when we talk about the Big Bang. We're like, well, there's a problem that we can't investigate too early. There's a problem that the James Webb found that sort of galaxies form a lot earlier than than we first thought. We acknowledge the problems that we have. We acknowledge that abiogenesis is hypotheses, and we don't know exactly how it came. The problem is that these people, they will omit the problems, like the problem that, oh, look at the replica. See, a boat this big can be built and it can certainly float, but it has a steel bottom. You're missing out some of the most important information. It's okay to say, hey, we didn't know how they dealt with the water problem, but they won't ever mention that. How did they deal with the flooding? Like, water coming in, foundering is what it's called. We don't know. They don't deal with that problem. They just avoid mentioning that would be a problem, but it absolutely would be a problem. And part of the reason why is because you can't just say, well, God sorted it all out by miracles or magic or sort of, things that they were doing that sorted it out. Because if that's the case, then why bother to build a boat at all? And a lot of it comes down to that. A lot of it is, well, God made it work. But the problem is that why go through the motions of building a boat at all? If God can just make it work, why build a boat? Why not just have, everybody in the world just poof out of existence and have Noah and the 8 people as the only people left? Why bother with the entire song and dance? But of course it has to work because Noah has to do it by purely materialistic means. That's why they have to come up with all of that. Because if you're not using materialistic means and you're appealing to miracle, it makes no sense whatsoever. And I do want to also point out that there was earlier models of the flood. There was earlier stories of the flood. The Epic of Gilgamesh is actually a great one. That has even down to the doves being released. The Atrahasis is another one, and then that was earlier still. And that had an even smaller boat than the Epic of Gilgamesh. So it's not a case that this is the only flood myth out there. It's just the latest one in a series of flood myths that seem to have the most extravagant story associated with it. And either number one, this happened repeatedly, because why should we take the mythological Bible, the account of the Bible, over the account of the story of Gilgamesh? Because we believe in it? Because we have a religious belief in it? No. If one's historical, then the other's historical. And so, what happened? There were these multiple great floods where the same events happened? Or was it a one story that got larger and more inflated as time went on? I think I would absolutely lean towards a very sort of common story getting larger and more developed and more grandiose as time went on. So by the time it got from, and you're quite right, Eric Wanda. It was the Eridu Genesis is the oldest narrative, and that sort of has the same sort of key beats as the flood, and then you've got the Atrahasis, then the Epic of Gilgamesh, then you've got the flood, Noah's flood, right? So the much more likely scenario is that there was a flood story, and that grew over time, and it was attributed to great people, and others co-opted the story and made it more grandiose. This happens all the time. But, you've got to believe in your Bible, right? Yeah. So anyway, thank you so much for joining me. I realize a bit of a short one today, and I do apologize. As I said, I've been under a lot of stress, and I've had a bit of a hard time over the last week, just sort of personal things and things happening in my life. So I do apologize, and I will pick out if anyone's got any suggestions for what to do for next week. But I want to give a big thank you to everybody that got readerships and everybody that donated money. I do want to give them a big shout out. I know Eric Wanda was the first one to chime in, so I'll shout out Eric Wanda first before I get hold of my my comments and stuff. Oh, thank you. I really appreciate it. I seem to be missing my private comments. Anyway, it was Eric Wanda. It was Beamsy, gave a ton of membership. So thank you so much, Beamsy. Really appreciate it, mate. Thank you to Eric from Skeptics and Scoundrels. Great channel. Don't forget to check it out. And thank you so much to Yahooligan who contributed 2 Canuck dollars. I appreciate every little thing that everybody does, because you guys allow me to do this. I am almost at 2K. So if you want to send around, oh, thank you so much, Max. I really appreciate it, mate. Pastor Doug Batchelor on evolution. Well, I won't promise I'll do evolution, but I'll certainly note it down, Eric, that if you do have anything up in the meantime that you want, do put it in the comments. I do read the comments. I may not respond to all of them. I apologize if I don't, but I do read all of the comments. So if you have any suggestions or anything, throw it in the comments. I'm more than happy to look at it. If it looks like a good fit, yeah, I'll do it. So Eric, if it looks like a good fit, mate, I definitely will do it. That's not a problem. Yeah, and I'll decide whether I do want to address the Jim Bob in the room, who sort of I did have a run-in with him. I'll try to get that posted, and I've got a few things to post, but thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. I really appreciate all of the kind sentiments. And don't forget, be kind to yourself, especially if you are going through a hard time. Even if you're feeling down, it's okay to be down. It's not, don't beat yourself up for not being able to do everything that you want to do because you're having a bit of we go through these things. We go through these times of not feeling fantastic. And then, but the important thing is it never lasts forever. It never lasts forever. You do have sort of times where you're not doing the best. It'll end. And then you'll start to get on top of things. We just have to know that nothing's forever. But in the meantime, do be kind to yourself while you are doing it, because don't beat yourself up for not being everything that you want to be and having a bit of a crap time. It's crap. I get it. I know. And so be kind to yourself while you're going through it, and try to be kind to others. Yeah, and I suppose that is when you are going through a crap time, sometimes you lash out, sometimes you are not as you're not as you can't take other people into account as much as you probably may want to, and I get that too. So do try to be kind to each other as much as possible. But thank you so much, everybody. I really appreciate it. I will send you somewhere after the outro, but do take care, and much love to everybody out there. Thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate it.
25.